I don't know if I brought my workshop. Yeah, I did. Okay. We're going to call to order the workshop session at 4 o'clock. And I think I'll turn over to staff to introduce any discussion items, then we'll see what the commission has.
Yes, so good afternoon. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to get some input from you. So as you know, we have had consultants working on the zoning ordinance to go through, to give us recommendations. What they have not really done, and I guess we didn't ask them to do, is to give us a whole new industrial or I-1 zoning district, because so much of that is very much based on what the county, it's very customizable to what the county needs. And so at this point, we really need input on all the discussions we've had over the past few years of, should we move this into light or heavy? Should we consider warehouses light or heavy? All of those ideas that we've talked about, it's really time to go ahead and split it up or kind of move ahead. So, for example, we've recently had a couple of meetings with, pre-application meetings with developers or their representatives who are looking at building, we're not going to say warehouses, but large buildings for storage that are not hugely large, but like 40,000 square feet and below, which is smaller than any warehouse we've ever permitted. So we've had a couple of those applications, and one is actually on the agenda later, the TK Electric on Highway 80. That's two smaller buildings, much smaller. And so we've processed those as B3 because they're storage buildings, and they're for a company. They're not like distribution warehousing. But it started as thinking that I know that you all have discussed in some workshops we've discussed is, should there be a break point where a warehouse above a certain size, heavy industrial, maximum buffers, but a warehouse below a certain size, maybe we could consider it as not quite heavy industrial. Maybe we could consider it either light industrial or create a category in B3. So it seems like we might be getting more of this now, these kind of less than 50,000 square foot flex buildings. And so it's something to consider. We had a meeting on Monday with another prospect, and they want to do, it was, what is a total of 32,000 square feet flex building. They want to make it available for different companies to rent space and maybe have a dock, sort of like mini storage, but not mini storage, offices with a dock in the back. And that was a new one for us, and they were kind of pitching it to us. But it made me think that, we could take that through as B3 because it's not a warehouse, it's a storage, and in fact it's offices, so that's B3. But do we want to look at creating a category for that, given that might be the wave of the future? With a lot of them are referencing Hyundai when they talk to us about these, because it's going to be for contractors who want to have storage convenient to the plant, and for all those Chatham County, the exodus from Chatham County where they're all selling their sites in Chatham and coming to Effingham for slightly cheaper land.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because I run into this on the banking side and commissioner side, is not everybody needs 100 or 200,000 square foot building. And that's one complaint that I've gotten over probably the last 3 years is there's no 10,000 square foot space available for the smaller business guy. And so, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I do come across that a lot.
Yeah.
You do something like that, earn it a B3. You wouldn't be, that's what she said.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing, but we might hit a point where it's, gonna be kind of questionable. But this, this meeting Monday, given its location, hate to do industrial there, but on 80, but B3 would be appropriate if we could make sure, if we could squeeze.
The only thing I would worry about is, just need to be careful, because, everybody's going to try to push it one step forward and try to find that loophole.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would caution on.
Yeah. So we need a firm maximum, but it can't be too high. Because we've had, let me see, TK Electric was I think their total is still below 40,000, and then these gentlemen on Monday, I think the total was still going to be below 32,000, and that, on Old Augusta Road, there's a single just south of Estes, there's a small 50,000 square foot warehouse going in, and we consider it our little, the smallest one we've permitted, and it's compared to the massive ones at the start of Old Augusta Road. You drive further, and there's just, it seems so teeny, but it's not. It's 50,000 square feet. That's big, but
But
so
it's one
that's
that might
it.
have 2 or 3 big trucks a day versus 100,
Yeah,
which makes it a lot
Yeah.
different.
but if we can encourage these smaller ones, that's going to serve
Well,
contractors.
perfect
It's gonna-
example is that electric company that's
Mhm.
coming for that piece of property we rezoned.
Mhm.
10,000 square foot warehouse with parking for his truck, for his fleet. But I've seen, that in the front and then mini storage in the back in Chatham County. I know a fellow that actually owned one and it worked out well.
But there's a certain size that, I think that's what I heard Reggie saying, that needs to be in B3 that would solve that. I mean, I don't know that we want to have a B3 area set up as a light industrial, you know what I'm saying?
So as of right now, anything that's 30,000 square foot electrical building, the way it's set up, or even if it's 10,000, they'd have to apply for industrial. The way things stand today,
Well, so with TK Electric, the one on Highway 80 that
That was a
actually all we're
B3
voting on
zoning.
tonight, we brought that through as B3
Okay.
because G&M Mechanical on Highway 30 is B3. Now, it's a smaller building, but
Mhm.
we really wanted to not do industrial spot along 80 because it's not compatible, whereas B3 is compatible at the one at Dogwood Way. And then this other one we met with, it's on, was it Ziegler? Highway 80 and Ziegler, just across from the old Parkers. So that was rezoned partially to R1 B3 a few years ago, but they're gonna come back and ask for all B3 or industrial, whatever we suggest they do. But it really made me think that we may well see a lot more of this, because that really does seem to be a trend that they're leaving Chatham County, a lot of these companies leaving Chatham County, coming here looking for space that's more affordable to them. And, we would probably want to run it through as B3, but we want to make sure we're on the same page with you all and not bringing you products that you don't want to see in that category. But industrial just seems so extreme because then we can't control what happens there.
well, I thought we were making a bunch of bad decisions and nobody wanted to move here anymore and do business here because we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah,
I'm up here.
well, what I'm looking at here on the 5.12 is this what we currently have?
This is current, yeah.
So we have a light industrial and a heavy industrial all in one I zoning.
All in one.
That's the issue. So, sounds like, do we have B3 here given to us as well to look at? I guess my question is gonna start here. Is there anything in this light industrial that's also in B3? Or are these all, for example, I saw, some repair shops, where were they? Automotive sales and repairs. I would thought that would be in B3. Is that also in B3?
Sales, service, and storage is in B3.
What's
yeah.
that?
Automotive sales, service, and storage is in B3.
So automotive sales and repairs is also listed under light industrial.
Yeah, it's not very consistent.
Yeah, see,
So
to
we need to
me,
clean this
it
list up.
should be that, and I think you agree with this, light industrial ought to allow anything that's in B3.
Yes, it does.
So we need to remove these things that are B3. That's the first thing I would say. Let's clean up this one and have the wording say B3 is permissible, all B3 is permissible in light industrial.
Yeah, it's just like a florist. Why is that in light industrial?
Yeah, we need to clean this one up before we do, it's hard to determine what, if we need 2 I zonings, and we probably do, but I think you need to clean the I light up first, so it's not repeating any B3. And then we could add those 2 or 3 things like in the light industrial, a warehouse of under a certain square footage could be built. And it ought to be, I'm gonna suggest under conditional use, because a lot of this is gonna be based on the truck traffic that's there. If someone's having a 30, 40,000 foot warehouse for their own business, like the electrical company,
Right.
it's more of a supply house, If you got somebody that's storing 3 or 4 different folks' product, they may have trucks coming in and out, and we may wanna make it a conditional use based on trucks and make sure no trucks are parked there for very long, the things we've always been concerned about with putting trucks in a B3 area or
Yeah.
light industrial that's gonna make a lot of banging and noise.
And in fact, that's what happened on Monday. Katie, the zoning manager, suggested that if we take it through as B3, just to be absolutely certain, we should do a conditional use as well. And that way we can condition it based on their, as they come back with a more, they came in with a very, very simple concept plan to just show us so we could talk about it. And we gave them some feedback. Our engineers from EOM were participating via Zoom, and they gave some feedback too. And so we expect to get a more professional kind of exhibit from them. And that would then give us a square footage, and you know, we want them to show parking, so then we get a better idea where the truck's gonna go. Are they gonna impact those residences that are just east of them there on 80? So, yeah, and then Katie brought up a point too about the DRI. DRI, though, it's 500,000 gross square feet, so that's not, that might be a good indicator between heavy and light industrial if we wanted to take warehouses out of heavy completely, because that's, but that also goes back to the number of trucks coming and going, because it's that whole package of a big warehouse with lots of trucks that makes it heavy, really. So I'm not sure that's one way to look at it, though.
Yeah, I almost think B3 ought to have a reasonable size warehouse storage. And Jamie, help me with this, since of the banking, is 10,000 square feet enough, or 20,000 that could be in B3 for, like the TK Electric and so forth? I'm not as concerned about the industrial limiting.
Okay.
I think I'm not as concerned about that, because
I would say up to 50,000 and then cap it there.
So gross, because they might come in with two buildings. In fact, these two both have, so absolutely, you know, for the site.
Okay, yeah, gross,
And
yeah.
maybe a minimum acreage too, I don't know.
you probably have to put some kind of acreage to that, because
Yeah.
pretty soon you could have really a industrial park with 10, 50,000 square foot houses. And what we're looking for is a business that needs some storage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it might be so much per acre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the site, Katie, on 80, is that 6 acres total? The one from Monday?
Yes, about.
And that looked like a pretty tight fit for what they were proposing, so
It was.
6 acres might be an absolute minimum.
And it was the 32,000 square feet segmented into.
Yeah, there was like
1,000.
2 buildings and an L, because of the way the lot is laid out.
And Steve was asking, are we talking then, if we're talking about size of buildings, is it total, you know, if I have 5 buildings and they're 10,000 square feet each, is that 50,000 square feet
Yeah,
a building?
I think,
Or
yeah.
it's another
yeah.
thing to consider?
So it's like gross square feet for the parcel,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if this makes any sense, but it might be something like 1,000 feet per acre. You know, which is, so 10 acres would give you, what, 10,000 square feet?
Yeah, we might.
And that's
yeah.
about what they did. On the 6 acres, that might have been a little tight.
He's
That-
got two, I just looked at the sketch, it's, looks like 2 warehouse where he could possibly use one and rent out to the other, but I don't know what the square footage is on that back building, but.
For TK, I think when they revised that sketch plan, because they removed the dogwood entrance, it seems to me the buildings got a little bigger, but they started out at 12,000 square feet each, and they're a little bigger now because they've grouped them together more closely, and so they're still below 40 for sure, and maybe in the high 30s, so they'd still fit within our theoretical model, but
And I can see a demand for that up here as the service industry is gonna grow, you know, up here for those type contractors.
Well, should we have a square footage for a B3? Like 10,000, so somebody have, that's, I don't know if you're familiar with Grace Community Church where I go, but that main worship center is pretty good size. That'd be about the size of the worship center of Compassion if you've ever been there. That's about 10 to 15,000 square feet, which would be plenty large, I would think, for a small company that just needed supply storage. If you did something like that in B3, you don't have to make them do an I. You can even make it conditional under B3, up to a
Right.
10,000 square foot storage for the place that needs some warehousing. But then have a light industrial with a 50,000 square foot. Does that sound reasonable, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, I would start by cleaning up this. Step 1, take everything on here that's in B3 and redline it for us for the next workshop. Show that this is already in B3, and then we'll add a line that says, I think it's already on here actually, that all the B3 is permissible under
Yeah,
I.
it's at
It's
the
already
very
in
top.
here. So you don't need to even add the line. So clean this up, how it would look without the B3.
Okay,
Add to the B3 some suggestions on some, as a conditional use, a warehousing size, say of 10,000 feet, based on the one we just approved. And then what's left in light industrial, see what we need to include, and it may be some items that are in a heavy industrial. One we know we want to include is up to a 50,000 square foot storage facility.
okay.
You know, and there may be some things under heavy that we need to move to light. So clean that up, and then I'd bring that document back to us, because to me right now, it's kind of hard to visualize all the changes until we get that document. Any
Okay.
other input from the board that you'd like for them to address for the next workshop? That might help it be a little clearer.
Yeah, like boat sales and automotive sales, I mean, I wouldn't think we would have to have those two in light industrial. I mean, I think we could look at those in B3.
And they are.
Just
They-
like the
yeah.
florist.
That's what I'm
I
saying,
don't
they
see
need to
where a
take them off of this, because all the
Okay.
B3.
I thought we had talked about the boat sales before.
Yeah,
We-
all-
Okay.
When we revised B3 last time, and you all did, we went through the list one by one, and even at the first reading, I think we were still culling. And so it was really helpful, because it was very much done and in the nick of time too, because we moved a few things into industrial, and now we can better control that.
Well,
That may be what we did, Jamie. We cleaned up the B3, adding things to it, but we didn't take them out of the I1.
probably what happened.
That's what happened, I bet.
Well, one other thing I want to bring up, and maybe we talk about it later, this may be jumping around too much, but someone pointed this out to me. But under our B2 zoning, we can put townhomes in B2 zoning.
Yeah, if it's mixed use.
And,
If it's mixed use, okay.
all right, so if we intentionally zone something for commercial use, and we zone it B2, and then we have a developer come back and ask us that they want to put townhomes because they think they don't have to come back to us for rezoning, how do we handle that?
We tell them now, because last year when we revised these, we made mixed use, and they can go up to 12 units per acre, but it has to be mixed use. We don't have a percentage breakout of how much acreage or square footage goes to commercial versus townhome or residential.
So it can't just be straight townhomes?
No, it
And-
can't, we wouldn't let them through, because the density, 12 per acre, there's no way we'd tell them that has to be mixed use. Now, oddly enough, we've had, in B3, it's also the same thing in B3, we've had a meeting recently with someone about a parcel on 21, and it's B3, 3 TPO, it's B3, and they came in with apartments, they're looking at apartments there. And here's the thing, just when we were revising it last year, when we changed this, so it had to be mixed use, at that point, there was that apartment complex for Goshen Road Extension, and that came in just right around the same time. So we let them through with their density, which is about up to 12 per acre, because that whole area represented a mixed-use development. It's got offices, it's got a fire station, so we said, okay, you all agreed that that is a mixed-use development. And so now we just recently had a meeting with another prospect who wants to build luxury apartments here, on 21 perhaps, on that parcel that's just been cleared at McCall Road. And they want the same deal. We encourage them to consider mixed use, but when that Seasons of Japan and that strip center opens, I mean, they're all gonna be right there, so that's truly mixed use. They're not one developer, but it is a mixed use area, so they're gonna pitch to get
Okay,
the
well,
maximum.
that makes me feel better then, because this particular situation, they thought they could just bypass the Board of Commissioners and just stick a bunch of townhomes there without coming back before us, and I was like, oh, gosh.
I know
you know,
people think they can do
that
that, but then they
could be a
call us
problem,
and we
but-
say, no,
But if that's the case, then, okay.
Yeah,
So to make sure I
Alright.
understand what you guys just discussed, if somebody gets B2 and they want to put townhomes in there, they've got to come back to us, or does staff manage that?
we would manage that. That would be kind of unusual. If they come to us and say, I've got a B2 parcel, I want to do residential only, we would say, you're subject to it'll be 9 units per acre, and we're gonna review this under the R3 guidelines, because it's residential, so we're gonna go to our residential guidelines for multifamily.
So density would go down.
And density goes down. Yeah, they don't get that maximum density, and they will argue with us, and then we will say, give us some mixed use and we'll talk, and then we won't hear anything more about it.
So the maximum density is not under R3. The maximum
not.
density
It
is
is
under
not.
B2.
It is under.
Don't we need to align that at least so that it's not 12 then?
We want to encourage mixed use, though. That was the whole idea, is
Oh, I
that,
got you. So you get, it's kind of like we did with the R5. You build the quality up, we give you more density.
Yeah.
So if you do mixed use, which commercial helps pay the bills of the county, because
Mm-hmm.
that's your sales tax and so forth. If you do mixed use, then we'll give you a little more density.
right, because that gives us the potential for maybe restaurants or maybe services, maybe a doctor would open nearby, or on 20, in Goshen Road Extension area, there's all those offices. It's such a nice little commercial development. And then there's a lot of people living nearby already in Goshen Crossing phases 1 and 2, and then the Goshen Road apartments or Goshen Road Extension apartments if that development goes through. And then there's another prospect, as I said, that met with us recently.
So I may have been looking at an older ordinance. So in B2, I mean, do we have it spelled out where when we have townhomes, it's / mixed use? Because I know this one developer was looking at it and it just had hyphen townhomes under B2. So they're like, oh, okay, well, I can do townhomes in B2. But I could have been looking at an older version.
I'm going to put it up on the
On-
screen. I think I can. Can I? Here.
Any question while you pull that up that
It-
Lee might want to weigh in on? What kind of,
This is B2, and this is, Municode is updated with everything we did last year. So this is the most current, and it's really wonderful to have it all in one place now. But this is all the changes we made last year. So it says down here, mixed-use residential. And when we discuss mixed-use residential, we do it, it can only be mixed use, and that's B2, and B3 is going to be the same.
so what you're saying, there's a subsection called mixed use, and the townhomes come under that subsection. So you have to go through the mixed use to get to the townhomes.
Well, if you're doing residential, you have to go to our R districts. So I own B, I want to do R, then I have to look at R. So if it's multifamily, that would be R3, and we revised R3 last year to be, it can be a more apartment or it can be townhome. So we have specific.
Does our website mirror this?
This is our website. This is Municode. This is
Okay, because what I was looking at, it was something different.
This
different
is how
version.
this is the link from our website to Municode.
Okay.
And so, and we do periodically get mixed use. Oh, here we go. In B3, it's more specific, mixed use residential with a maximum density of 12 units per acre. Now in B2, we didn't actually, we'll have to clean that up. We just say mixed use residential, but it's the same concept. We will only do
Yeah, they
it
need
up
to
to 12.
match.
It can
They
go
need
up
to
to
clean
12
that.
units per acre, but it has to be mixed use. And we have not received any application that really
So
follows
the
up
question I
on
was going to ask for Lee to weigh in on, how do we determine, without getting a liability situation, the amount of mixed use? So they go in there and say, I got a restaurant here on 2 acres, so the other 30 I'm building, and now we have a legal problem because they have mixed use. What defines mixed use? Do we need to define that in here?
There's in the revisions that are being proposed by our consultant, she does have a definition for mixed use. I don't have it with me right now. I'll have to dig it up. But we did talk to her about how we need to have some sort of proportion, either square footage or acreage, and like which is the better measure. Do we want to do it based on square footage, that 30% of the square footage must be commercial, for example? So we were asking her for some input on that, and I'll just go through my records after this and see if she's provided it. I
Yeah, I
can't-
would think square footage, because that bypasses them using the total acreage and some being wet and having to address all that. Just say square footage.
yeah.
And also that makes them match it while they're building it, right? Versus building all the residential first and then saving the commercial area. So it's got to be even 50-50 maybe. At least that's something what we need to do to protect ourselves legally.
Yeah, you definitely need to put some parameters in place. So,
Okay.
so you can determine, just like you said, what part's going to be, what's the expectation for residential as compared to the commercial use.
And I'm thinking out loud, and that's dangerous sometimes, but I'm thinking it'll be like 60% business and 40% residential, because you're adding a lot of density to that area with the 12 per acre, and you're trying to get some commercial. So that, I get the residential could be a quick sell for them, because the income's gonna come in quicker and faster than renting commercial units. But I'm thinking, maybe you do some research, but 60/40, because we're trying to get commercial. We're not gonna have any problem getting residentials.
Okay, that's great input, and that's exactly why I'm happy that we can talk today. So we'll look into that, and we'll get some examples, and it raises another question, because if the developer's got B3 and they're willing to do 40% residential, 60% commercial, can they do anything under B3? I would think we want to restrict them to offices and retail, and not, are we gonna have a car wash? Are we gonna have mini storage? I mean, maybe those would be good, but do we want to have a specific list of what they can do in mixed use?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want like automotive sales, service, and storage next to the houses, do we? Or the townhouses?
Yeah, I'd rather see retail and office than
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah. So purely service for all residents, doctors.
Professional or retail. I
Professional
don't,
retail.
when you say service, car wash is a service. I'd say
Dry
professional
cleaners,
retail.
yeah. Okay. So, all right, we'll
You've
get
seen
some.
those mixed uses, PUDs or whatever, where you have the townhomes, might even be in the back and the front, there's a shopping center and
Mhm.
offices, dental offices, and maybe even a convenience store on the corner, but you drive through in the back and there's some townhomes.
Yes.
And it gives us a little more commercial,
Mhm.
and we trade off a little. So that would all be under B2, you're saying? Or
Any
B3?
of the Bs. Well, B2 and B3 are where mixed use is
Sound like you would need a
permitted.
mixed-use section in this,
Yeah,
Teresa.
we'll expand the
And
mixed use.
define that out and list that under both B2 and B3.
Two, B3, two.
I didn't know that. That's good. So right now, they could think they could come in there and just build all townhomes
Right.
and circumvent our work we did on R3, which was to improve the quality of green space and pavilions and recreational and sidewalks and off-street parking. We're gonna try to get around. All that's gotta be addressed in that too. Same things that in R3's gotta be addressed.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the consultant actually was working on a section, a mixed-use section, and it was gonna be its own zoning district, and we were wondering if that was what you wanted to do. Do we want to create an actual zoning district called mixed use, or do we want to just make it kind of a subset of the Bs, of the B districts?
Yes and no. I think you have to have a mixed use that's defined that way, but it's not gonna be a separate zoning. It's
Okay.
gonna be, once you figure what that looks like, you plug it into where it fits, B2 and B3.
Okay.
Lee, does that sound like what we ought to do versus having a whole nother zoning for mixed use? 'Cause that gets confusing to me.
Yeah, and it wouldn't hurt to look at a few other districts, you know, I mean, I'm sure somebody else has dealt with it, so let's kind of get a taste for what everybody else is doing and then kind of do what we want to do, but.
Because if they didn't want to do a mixed use that we could plug in under a B2 or B3, they can always do a PUD. That way we can speak into every aspect of it.
Yeah,
They can put
yeah.
all kind of stuff in that, but we get to design it as we go. So I don't think we have to do a lot there because once again, they've got a choice. They can do a PUD. Okay? Do you have anything else related to that? Staff got anything else they want to discuss with us tonight?
Well, we probably did this a little in the reverse, but we need to introduce our Development Services Director. He's here.
We probably do. I hadn't even met him. Would the real Development Service Director please stand up? Do you have the information? Because our manager's gone, or could you, or maybe introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, unless, I don't want to take it away from Miss
Got it.
Stephanie. So my name is Steve Candler. I've been living in Effingham County, I don't know, almost 4 years. I'm in District 1. So I'm over there. So I have a real estate background, I have local government background, and I have a horticulture background. I golf. I'm sorry.
Do you have a team that you're playing on Friday? We need a player for EOM.
I love team playing. Yeah, I'm in. I'm 10 handicap.
I need you to, what's your first name, Sean?
Steve. Yeah, we'll get together on that. Okay.
Yeah, I need to get your name. 'cause
Okay.
they need
So
players.
I do gardening. I got strawberries and grapes, and then I have 3 beehives. So those are my hobbies. So maybe come fall, we'll have enough honey that we can spread some of the love around, so. Spread the love, huh?
I love it. I eat it every morning.
Do you? Good. It's good for you.
Toast honey with cinnamon on it.
Yep. So you stay away from the biscuit side, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, you're a thin fella. You can do that. So.
Actually, I want you to write down your diet for me, because I need, I want you to write your diet down for me, because I need to eat whatever you're eating.
I can't gain any weight.
Well, that's good. I don't have that problem. I
eat a
gain
bunch of
weight.
stuff and it doesn't do any good.
Yep.
Come eat with Wesley.
That's right.
But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad that I'm here. Everybody's been extremely nice. Tim's been nice. Just really looking forward to it, so we can get some stuff done.
All right, man. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. I know Tim's glad to have you on board. He's
He
wearing
is.
too many
Yeah.
hats right now.
He's already doing this, so
Outstanding. We're expecting great things, and I know you'll be able to provide.
thank you.
I had a couple of things I want. Anybody else have anything this evening?
I was just gonna bring up what we talked about before, what one of the planning board members brought up, on the R3 zonings. And just bringing up about the fact of maybe require a minimum of a 40-foot heavily vegetated buffer, maybe require an 8-foot metal security fence to be maintained by the developing property owner. Just with the density, just trying to protect the surrounding property owners. They said they supported or voted for one of the recent R3 zonings, but had a hard time doing it. The developer checked all the boxes, but still didn't think, maybe we have enough in place to protect the surrounding property owners from kids coming over to the surrounding property owner's property, and there may be some things we might want to consider.
I think we need to be careful that we don't make these, because I've heard that same
Yeah.
argument, people just don't like the townhomes or the density, but it's not like a prison facility. They're just living in a different type home. So I think we need to be careful we don't send the message that, if you put an 8-foot fence plus a 40-foot vegetative barrier, that's just like an encampment to me. I understand a buffer, but an 8-foot fence, that's pretty drastic, I think. And,
Yeah, I would.
But to both points, I can see both sides. There's something we have in our zoning already, and I can't remember where it's at, based on what the commissioners believe is necessary. That's not the exact wording, it's a paraphrase about something, and it has to do with transition. In other words, if you got multifamily, obviously it's multifamily, you shouldn't have to do that. But where you have a R3 going against maybe an R2 residential, should there not be something in there that allows us to look at the transition, just like we do with, what's the subdivision on Cherokee, Silverwood, was having the industrial warehousing. We looked at the buffer and the transition. Remember, we changed some things, had a berm added in
yeah,
addition to.
I'm not against, I'm just saying, if we go from just, a normal buffer to suddenly, if you look at overhead view, it's, like I said, like a encampment there versus people are not
Right.
supposed to trespass. That's a law enforcement issue.
I got you, but what I'm saying is something that would allow us, if it's normally 30 foot, for example, and you come up against an R2, which may have $500,000 homes in there.
I got you.
And here you're gonna have the $150,000, $200,000 townhomes, there's gonna be a lot of them. It's gonna be a lot more noise than they used to. Something that allows us, when you have a R3 butting up to an R2, that would allow us to have some freedom with transition.
Well, to address that issue.
Exactly.
If that's the biggest issue, I don't know that we've seen that, but
Well, that's where you would
Right.
go with a 40-foot buffer and a privacy fence, And I don't think you would run into legal issues, Lee. What you think if it was a transitional thing and the zoning allowed the board to consider the neighboring zoning in looking
Well, I
at
don't think it has to
transition?
be 40 feet exactly. They were throwing it out as an example. I don't think we're hard-nosed on that figure, 40 feet, but I think what you're saying, the transition, I
Could
think that's
be-
probably a better way to phrase that.
we probably need to get some public input just to see, you know, that may be a solution to some of these arguments that we hear, that people just don't want townhomes, period, but maybe if there was something like that in place, because I keep hearing in my backyard, well, you know, they shouldn't be trespassing to begin with, but I can understand if there's a large piece of property and the kids wander off, they're gonna find the woods, so.
And that's my point. If you're backed up to a large piece of property where there's 100 foot or 200 foot, or maybe before you get to a home, I have a hard time making them put a 40 foot buffer undisturbed. But if it's a residential area and it's a different type of housing,
Right.
Lee, is that, I think we've got some kind of zoning that allows us to look at transition.
I don't recall that, but we might. I would just say if we don't, then we just need to have some parameters in place so you can make your decision, so it's just not arbitrary. So you're just not doing it for this one and not the other one. Have some parameters in place. And also remember too that, you know, once you establish that buffer, it's like, who's going to maintain it? I see that a lot when they can have the best of intentions and it's constructed well as it can be, but within 3 to 5 years, it's just in horrible shape. And then they're
Could be
coming
a snake
back.
pit.
Yeah, and then they're coming back saying, hey, y'all required this. Who's maintaining it? Well, you know, you, the homeowners, are supposed to maintain it. But then they don't have an HOA and it's not functioning. So there's just a lot of other, you know, once you're required, just think about down the line, how's it going to look and after to accomplish.
Well, even some of these neighborhoods that they required wood fences, if you look along Hodgeville, when they were first built, they look great. Those picket, a lot of them are in disarray, vines growing on them, some of them are falling down, and I don't know if that's the HOA's responsibility to make those or folks to repair those, but those type fences over time decay and look bad, so. I don't know. I do think it'd be something we need to discuss and get some public, or some input. So I do understand that issue, because we need to find something to help. The townhomes are coming. I don't know.
Yeah, but Lee's got a good point. I thought about that. You put a 40 foot buffer, and I saw when I was working in Rankin, these buffers can grow up just like vacant lots. Next thing you know, you got a place for snakes to crawl into the residential and into the apartment area. Might be better for setbacks to be bigger, to give more space, but you might actually want it cleaned out and kept neater, so the homeowner can own it and take care of it. Then you can actually have a code enforcement against the homeowner that's not
Right.
maintaining it. Okay, well, that's something, I guess, if we could pass that to you, give us some ideas about transition between R3 and R2 and different types. How are others addressing it, and how might we address it?
Yeah.
That we don't create, as you were saying, work
Yeah.
for ourselves.
Yeah, Teresa just pulled up the just the general conditional. It was up there, Teresa. That's section 3 for conditional zoning. I think that may be what you were thinking about, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, this is what we referred to during that rezoning on Chimney, or Old Augusta Chimney Road. So this is, because of that list of conditions, that was really the first time we had done something extensive as that, with the berm requirement.
Yeah, I thought I remember something like that. There was some conditions where we could speak into it when it was a transition. And maybe that might be the way to do it. Then we can consider the issues you're talking about, Lee, on a one-on-one basis, just be consistent with it. Are we creating more issue here than we are helping? But I'd like to have the opportunity to, Jamie's point, there is a concern there by some, and we need to be able to address it.
You know, in a way, it's kind of handled in the buffer. This is the buffer table, and so, let me get that, hold on. Oh, wrong one. This one's better. So, proposed use, this is the proposed use column. If I'm proposing multifamily, that includes townhouses. Against any R district, there should be a 20-foot vegetative buffer, and that's what's included on the 2 R3 townhome developments that have been coming through our process. They've included the 20 feet, and then neighboring residents are saying they want 40 or more plus the fence, and that's where this is all coming from. So 20 feet, 40 feet, and again, 2 options. One, is it a strip of land that is owned by the HOA? Then we have maintenance issues in the future. If it's left to the back of every individual townhome building, then we may well have a case where the owner of that building, if it's individually owned, they come back and cut it all down because they want to have like you know, they want to have a soccer pitch in their backyard. So we can't control it then. We can't send code enforcement to have them reinstate. Well, we could try to send code enforcement to have them reinstate the buffer. But once we've passed final plat, like on a single-family residential subdivision, we don't really control that backyard anymore. And if the developer has planted a tree and there's someone allergic to that tree, and that tree's coming down, so keeping the buffer in a separately owned parcel kind of seems like the solution, but then we have the maintenance problem, because we do have a maintenance problem with HOAs going out of force. So we haven't solved that problem yet.
And it may be you can't completely solve it. It may be that you don't just have a vegetated buffer, because that could be growing up weeds and stuff. That we don't want that. That's snaky. You might could require the planting of trees in the initial phase of construction development. They may get cut down, but at least you've started it with some nice trees that probably have a good chance of staying. And then you got to trust the community to make some good decisions versus us getting into policing 20 or 30 feet around the property. But you can make the developer start with a ornamental type tree that has to be approved, you know. That maybe something like that could work.
So as somebody
You can come to the mic.
Okay, sorry.
No, that way she gets it recorded, and that way she can
Okay.
get it on.
So as somebody that has 269 townhomes gonna be next to me, so more concern besides the buffer
Now,
is lighting. Can we talk about lighting? Because that's almost 24 hours a day sometimes, you know, or at least it's all night long. So can we talk about that too?
Yeah.
In suggestions? Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you're talking about like a HOA paying for the lights, or
No, I'm talking about how bright they are, whether
how
they're,
light they are? I got you.
whether they're down or up or,
Yep.
so, you know,
Yep.
because so in an AR district, we're used to it being fairly dark. So if you have, you know, 269 units, there's gonna be lighting in there for a propensity of
Two
time.
things that's gonna create security, having adequate lighting, but then having it where it does
Yes, that's right.
correctly, it won't shine on the neighbors and,
That's what we're, hoping to have downlighting, just something like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address that too. Thank you.
be great.
We can include that in R3. I mean, we'll be polishing up R3 and as we go through this final adoption. I wonder that's on each house. What you may have that one or two homeowners who, for some reason, want to shine it up. We don't like that, but I don't know how we individually stop
I'd
that.
be more scared of maybe parking lot.
You're talking about street lights,
Those kind of
parking
things.
lights.
Yeah, those
He's not talking about home lights.
yeah.
Oh, for commercial, absolutely. Yeah, we have to fix that. We don't have good
Residential, though,
guidance.
Gotta do it,
residential has street lights many times. Trailer parks and residential areas have street lights, and how high they are can determine how bright they are.
Yeah,
And the type,
The type of light, they may have a light around the back of a facility, you know, recreational
Yeah,
area that may be,
a clubhouse, yeah,
Yep.
that's a good point.
Or-
Well, we would treat that probably as a commercial property, but yeah, we can put more language about that, because we've had a few commercial properties lately that, you know, are adjacent to residential, and that's been the concern, not so much that it would be storage, but that there'd be lighting. And so we're hoping, you know, as it comes through for site plan review, the EOM engineers are really good at catching things like lighting. They require a lighting plan, and that makes the design engineer realize that, no, we're serious. And then when it comes to the actual construction, if, you know, we look at that. But point well taken.
we don't have any requirement for lightings right now in,
We have very simple language.
in
you know,
R3.
Must supply a lighting plan. Fortunately, the EOM engineers will look at that and will critique and will negotiate and will.
in all the residential or just commercial?
Commercial.
No, that's what I'm asking. We don't have anything in residential right now.
Residential. No, we don't have a lighting district. As you know, some adjacent counties have lighting districts and subdivisions, and then they're taxed. The lighting is paid for to Georgia Power via the tax bill. So we don't have that in Effingham County. I think that would require action, certainly of the board, if not even the legislature. It's one of those, because it goes on your tax bill. But that's something to consider in the future too, because a lot of our residential subdivisions are built. Lights may be put in place by the developer, and then the HOA takes over, and they don't pay the bill, and there's no lights at night. so.
I've had requests for lighting, but, you know, we don't do that. A lot of times it's handled by the independent water companies. They'll have these smaller subdivisions, they'll handle it, or the HOA.
Right.
But
Mhm.
sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
We probably ought to look at something like that and see what we can do, because that improves security and safety. Probably is well or better than buffer sometimes, having good some lighting.
I know Bullock County has a lighting district ordinance. We can look at that. So
Okay.
just to get an idea
All
for
right,
the.
come back to the next workshop with some thoughts on that as well. That'd be good. I want to bring up something real quickly. I've had a couple of constituents talk to me about development services and health department not communicating real well, and I think it might be the health department, and I'm gonna try to handle that next board meeting. Just like we did the plat division, it was being difficult, now that's not so difficult. But they were saying that, when they get their plat approved for a site, a septic site, that they won't walk it down to our development services so that you can go ahead and record that plat. They've got to leave work or wherever they're at, come during business hours, and all they're doing is picking up and walking it down to development services. And I don't know if we have the vice versa issue sometime where development services maybe has something. In the next phase, it goes to the health department. But it does seem kind of odd that constituents who are very busy and involved, I know one said they came a while back and health department was closed, so they couldn't do it that day. And all they were gonna do is pick it up and take it to development services. And I'm really intent that we need to make business easier for our constituents, not difficult, when it's something we can coordinate. So I don't know how you could coordinate with the new health department director, but if it's simply just moving a document from our development services to there, or from health department to development services, I'd like those two departments to communicate and work that out, so someone didn't take off work to do that. Now, if they gotta sign something, that's a different story. But what I'm being told is there's no signature, there's just the two departments are not allowed to take one document to the other one.
That could be a chain of custody thing too, because the health department, I know, does review some subdivision, some minor subdivision plats before we can sign them, and also the septic system permits. And I don't know a lot about that process, but it could be that they, under state law, can't hand it off to anyone but the actual applicant.
Yeah, I'd wanna see the state law, cause there should be something under chain of custody where you just sign for it, that shows, I get that they don't wanna take a document down here and say, cause it's probably making them sign when they pick it up, But I would think there'd be something where that document could come down here, make it easy, and you sign for it, we have the plat, it's ready to record, And they can send an email out to, or a phone call, whatever the process would be to notify Wesley Corbett, we have approved your soil building permit, and we are sending your plat back to Development Services for recording.
Well, we sign, we don't record.
Huh?
We sign, but we don't record, although
Well,
we're discussing whether
Sign,
we
and
should.
then it can be recorded, you gotta sign,
Yeah.
that's my point,
Yeah.
And just look at that and tell me why we can't make it easier on constituents. Why can't our development services carry documents there if all they're doing is carrying it? And why can't they carry it back and have some kind of process where there is a chain of process and accountability that's legal?
Yeah, we have good relations with the new director, and he comes to some of our pre-application meetings, so we're definitely forming a good bond, and we can
Yeah,
ask
I
him.
think the new director's gonna be real pleasant to work with, but let's do that if we can, make it easier. Anything else from the Board of Commission?
No.
All right, we have about 8 minutes to our meeting, so why don't we take a brief adjournment for this workshop? Staff, got anything else that you want to bring to our attention tonight? Okay, take a brief adjournment, and we'll come back at 5 o'clock for our regular session meeting.